I found out the whole truth about our nanny. Hello, everyone. My name is Nora. Not so long ago, my parents replaced my nanny, and all because the last one left. My father and mother work very hard and come home late, so they decided to hire a person who will look after me, cook, and help me do my homework. But over time, I noticed that we were missing food and some other things. I did not tell my parents about everything yet, but decided to look for more proof. And here's what I found. By the way, do not forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share my story with your friends. So, last year, when the last nanny left, I encouraged my parents, said that I can cope without one because I am already 12 years old, so I can look after myself. They didn't like the idea at first, but I persuaded them not to spend the money, but to at least try it out. After much thought, my parents agreed. But it was more complicated than I'd imagined. Before, when I came home from school, a hot lunch was already waiting for me on the table. I ate quickly, had a little time to rest, and then sat down to my homework. My old nanny explained the material to me so easily and simply that what I did not understand at school took a maximum of 2 hours to complete at home. I didn't think it would be so hard without help. Now that I was on my own, I would come home and warm up my own dinner. Then while I ate, clean up after myself, do some chores around the house. Then there was no time to rest, and sometimes I didn't even get to finish my homework. I would fall asleep right at the table, and my academic performance began to suffer. Then it was decided to look for a nanny again. After a couple of weeks of searching, we found a suitable candidate. Her resume was perfect, and both my mom and I liked her. Her name was Grace. She was 47 years old, and I really liked her at first. She was so adept at doing homework, cooking for me, helping me with my lessons, and I was back to my old routine. And she also baked great goodies that my last nanny couldn't make. I was grateful for her, and that we'd found her. The first week was just perfect, but then I started noticing some oddities behind her. Once, when I came home from school earlier than usual, I came into the house and came across some packages at the entrance. There were some containers, but I didn't look at them. Immediately, Grace came out to meet me. She was very scared at the sight of me, and then I asked what the packages were for. Grace was confused and then said that she had just come from the store. She put the groceries in the refrigerator, and I saw the cheese she took out. You can't buy it in a local store because it was given to us, imported from another country. My dad loved cheese, so it was a gift for him. I didn't pay it much notice and went to change. A couple of days later, I noticed that the cheese wasn't in the refrigerator, although Dad could not eat such a huge piece so quickly. At breakfast, he once asked where his cheese was, and my nanny replied that it was all used up. Dad was upset, but not too much. The same evening, when my nanny asked to go out for 2 hours on business, I was left at home alone. I was hungry and reached into the refrigerator, opened it, and saw that it was almost empty. This doesn't usually happen with us. My mother always makes sure that the refrigerator is stocked. When the nanny came back, I asked her where all the groceries were, but she said we were all out. Did we really eat that much? I thought to myself. Then I went to my room to pick out clothes for school tomorrow and couldn't find a skirt I hadn't worn in a long time. I asked the nanny if she'd seen it, but she shook her head. Like, no. It was strange because I didn't lend it to anyone. The next day, my mother left me some money on the table before she left for work. I didn't have my first class, so I went to school a bit later than usual. When I went downstairs, the money had vanished. The nanny was cleaning up and said she hadn't seen it. This already seemed strange, and I decided to observe her closer. I said I was going to school, but I instead hid on the roof of the house. Within 10 minutes, my nanny came out of the house with bags in her hands, got into her car, and drove somewhere. I managed to write to my friend, Kira, to come to me in her car. We followed my nanny. We drove for a long time, about 30 minutes. Then I saw that my nanny was selling our things to some dealer. What? She steals our things and sells them? I asked indignantly. Kira covered my mouth and took a few pictures on her phone. We went to school. Then after school, I came home again, where Grace was cooking dinner and acting like her usual self. I opened the refrigerator and saw that it was almost empty again, even though we had just bought groceries yesterday. Then I rummaged in my closet and counted 5 things that were missing from there. When my nanny asked me what I was doing, I said I was cleaning. I wanted to catch her red-handed. Then I did. On the same day, Kira arrived again. I told the nanny that we would go for a walk and left the house. Grace pulled out again and headed for the next block. We followed her, and I saw her carrying some of my mom's things in bags, more groceries and some other stuff. I was so angry that when she got out of the car at someone else's house, I ran out to her and started screaming. I called her a thief and said I would turn her in to the police. Then a little girl came out of the house. "Mom, did you bring us food?" "Who is this?" she asked, looking at me. My nanny begged me. She asked me to come into the house and promised to tell me everything. It was such an old house. There were 3 children inside. The oldest was 13 years old, and then a little boy and girl. She told us that they were her children, that her husband had left her, and that she had to take food from us to feed them because she didn't have enough money. She begged me not to tell the police and promised to resign. At first, I wanted to tell my mother, but then I felt so sorry for her. Then Kira ran in. She filmed everything on her phone and then said that she should come up with an honest income. After all, this is theft at the end of the day. Grace vowed not to do it again, and we had a recording to make sure. The very next day, she quit. I asked for the things she stole from us, and then I told her that she should find another job, a better paying one. I told my mother that I had ruined my things and thrown them away. I haven't seen Grace since. Do you think I should have reported her to the police? And what would you have done in my place?
I used to think that people who kept a personal diary were weird. I thought that only the lonely or the crazy did it. I thought so until I came across it myself. My diary not only listened to my problems, but thanks to it, I didn't make a mistake. You could say that my diary saved my life, but in return, my parents learned all my secrets. So, I'm Stella. I have parents and an older brother whose name is Justin, by the way. Our age difference is 6 years. Yes, this is the age when there can be no common interests between us. My brother always liked to play alone as a child. When I tried to join him, taking cars or soldiers without asking, just got really mad. He immediately threw a hysterics so that I would take my hands away, or better yet, go to another room and never visit him. I immediately cried and ran to complain about it to my mother. I cried out in tears that he had offended me and said he didn't want to see me. Oh, my mother always gave him a thrashing after that. I remember her always telling him that he was the eldest and should be more lenient with me. I didn't quite understand the phrase, but it was a good one. Yes, I was happy when my brother got beaten from my parents because of me. Being the youngest in the family is a pleasure. Everyone loves you, brings you all the most delicious things, often takes you to an amusement park, buys toys. All the attention goes to the little ones, and this always happens. Once, when my parents went to visit Aunt May in the hospital, Jess and I stayed home. My parents said we shouldn't go with them. My brother was left in charge. As soon as Dad's car disappeared around the corner, Jess told me to go to my room, play with my dolls, and not leave until the adults returned. I knew he meant it, and I pretended to agree to everything. After 10 minutes, I left the room and went to my brother, but he was not in his room, in the living room, or in the kitchen. Then I went out to the back and saw him smoking. When my parents arrived, I naturally told my mother about it and showed her where he hid a pack of cigarettes as proof. Yes, I saw it too. Oh, Justin's face was red with anger at that moment, but I couldn't forgive him for his attitude towards me. War is war. At this point, I came up with a brilliant idea to write down all of my brother's joints, to keep a diary, so I could then ask him for anything in return for the diary. As I planned, so I did. Records, that is, dirt became even more. We could only wait for more to accumulate. I already imagined that in return for the diary, Justin buys me a house for Barbie, which I have long dreamed of. But then something unexpected happened. Remember at May? So she went back to the hospital for her procedures. She had a daughter, my little cousin Cindy. Her aunt asked her parents to look after her while she was away, and they, of course, agreed. I can't say that I was upset. We had a normal relationship, but since she came to our house, I felt that her parents pay more attention to her. At first, it looked like a sign of courtesy and respect, then it started to cross the line. Now I was in my brother's place. Whenever I wanted to play with my toys, Cindy would come to my room and ask me to join her. I was angry because I didn't want to share. I sent her away several times, but then my mom and dad called me in. For about 30 minutes, they scolded me for my behavior, saying she was small and I should be more lenient. What? Small? Am I small? And what the hell does it mean to be condescending? Why do they say the same things to me as my brother? I couldn't believe Cindy had taken my place. I didn't know where to vent this anger, so I started writing everything down in my diary, so it was easier. Meanwhile, the hatred grew. Cindy had been with us too long, and it was as if my parents had found a replacement for me. They've never done this before. I was a little girl. I was loved. I was so offended that I felt superfluous, unnecessary, and decided to leave the house. Before I knew it, I was writing down all my thoughts and feelings in my diary. It turns out it's easier this way. In my last entry, I wrote a farewell note and left the diary in my closet. By the time they find it and read it, I'll be far away. I packed my bag and ran out of the backyard and down the road. I walked slowly about 2 blocks and heard a familiar voice. Justin was shouting my name. When I waited for him, he came at me like a madman. I saw tears in his eyes for the first time. He was talking fast, telling me not to get all this crap and come home, and then he said that he loved me very much. I was surprised and started to cry too. I'd never seen him cry, and I didn't think he was so worried about me. I thought he didn't care about me. Just talked me into coming home. It turns out that when I went out through the backyard, he was standing there smoking. When he saw me, he decided to find the diary. I knew you would blackmail me with it, and I wanted to read it, but I came across the last entry. Look, Monica, we fight a lot, but know that you are my family, and I love you, sis, he said. This was unexpected. Then he immediately began to laugh it off, saying that I would not hear anything like it again. I still won't share my toys with you. You're breaking everything, he said, smiling. When we got home, he calmed me down and put me to bed. And when my parents came home from work, I told them everything. At first, they were taken aback with horror. My mother was hysterical. She scolded me first, then hugged me and cried. I kept saying that something might have happened to me if Justin hadn't found the diary in time and run after me. This reaction was to be expected. I burst into tears and told her that it was because of my jealousy of Cindy. Mom and Dad apologized for not paying attention. They explained that they felt sorry for Cindy and tried to help her be stronger while her mother was in the hospital. My mother made me promise not to do this again and tell her about all my experiences. By the way, Cindy's mother went on the mend and soon took her daughter home. I realized that if you hide your inner resentment, the situation only gets worse. Therefore, it is better to share your experiences with your family.